and start writing down the notes. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Give a little of yourself, cure your greed, purify your wealth.
Our schools, what is missing? Join Dr. Muhammad in Our Schools, What is Missing? He will be discussing the most common mistakes made in our educational systems.
What type of teaching they teach him, what they say to him, what books they select for him to read, what things that he listens to, what games that he begins to play with.
How to perfect the work in the school.
Our goal is to improve our school.
And we'll see practical solutions from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger.
Most of the criteria for success for us had been designed for us by our Creator.
Our Schools, What is Missing? In Ramadan on Huda TV.
There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Fiqh of Zakah. Sheikh, just before the break there, we went into the important topics, or that we see as very important topics in the study of Zakah, or the understanding, which is who go about paying Zakah. You spoke about the person who was a Muslim. You also went into the area of somebody who's free, for example. This was a very important point. When we speak about the person who's a Muslim, what's the reason why somebody who's not a Muslim is not asked to pay zakah, Shaykh?
As I quoted the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا مَنَعَهُمْ أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا. So basically, you're addressing somebody who does not believe in the oneness of Allah. So even if he gives in his charity, his charity is not accepted. If you recall the hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when a Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam deployed him to Yemen, he said, one step at a time. Inform them about the oneness of Allah, and if they respond to them, tell them about the salah, then afterward the zakah. So it doesn't make any sense to ask somebody to pay zakah as an act of worship while he does not believe in the Lord, does not believe in Allah nor in His oneness. So this is ibadah, is not just a social duty or a social mean of cooperation and showing solidarity, but mainly it is an act of worship. It doesn't mean that if somebody came forward and he wants to donate his entire wealth, I would tell him no, it will be taken from him. Thank you so much. But I will appreciate that and will thank him. But by Allah, it will not be accepted. And what really matters is that we will not go to a non-Muslim and ask him, you gotta pay zakah because you live in a Muslim country. Instead, there is another thing which is called jizya, for instance, if a non-Muslim, similar to tax, happen to be living in a Muslim country.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, so now we've gone through these two. We also started looking at the nisab. So you started speaking to us about the calculation. Now, there's always a word that's always put with nisab. Sometimes you hear it, and I did hear it, which is hawl. Now, what does this constitute, Sheikh? What does this mean to us?
The word hawl means a year, particularly a lunar year, because we go about by the moon. And why not the solar year? Because the lunar year is shorter than the solar year. It is the beginning of every month is determined by the appearance of the crescents. Once it's born, then this is the beginning of the new Islamic month. So when we round up 12 Islamic months, this is a whole calendar, a whole year. So if somebody possessed the nisab, or an amount of money which is, what we call it, zakatable, he possessed certain amount of gold or silver or cash or trade of goods or livestock, which is zakatable. Today is the beginning of Sha'ban or Ramadan. Then the beginning of Sha'ban next year, the zakah is due. We don't go about by June, July, or any of the solar months.
So this whole, this lunar month, is it on all the types of wealth, Sheikh? All the types of wealth that we have spoken
Thank
about?
you for asking this question. This is a very important information. That only pertains zakah on an-naqdain, gold and silver, and anything that's related to them, any currency, trade of goods, livestock, but not on fruits and vegetations, or what we call it crops, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, آتوا حقه يوم حصاده. The zakat will be on the crops once we harvest them. So it doesn't go about by the year. It doesn't have a hawl. In the same year we can produce more than one crop. Also with regards to الركاز والمعادن, الركاز, the treasures, once it's fetched out, and similarly the precious minerals, then it is zakatable. We don't have to wait for an entire year to round up. Once we dug it out or fetched out, then we'll pay the zakat due on it.
So if this is the case, you said something there that this 1 year, certain types of wealth, what do you do when your types of wealth, for example, maybe, you know, a very misunderstood concept, but the types of wealth go up and down. And I'll give an example. There you have me, for example. I put some money in, say, some stocks and shares, and it's beyond the nisab, and it's at the beginning of a year, for example. And then during that year, I lose that money, for example. Okay, so it fluctuates. And then by the end of that year, maybe I'm in a minus, I'm in debt. How does that work, Sheikh?
Well, that's a good point. And that's why we mentioned the conditions and who should pay the zakah. There are two conditions with al-nisab and al-hawl. And they're very much related to each other. So if somebody possesses the nisab, the minimum threshold, which is zakatable, then he went bankrupt. Then once again he started the business, and business boomed, and it went beyond the nisab. Al-Jumhur, the vast majority of the Muslim jurists, Shafi'i, Ahmed, and Malik, said then he shall start a new hawl from the time where he possessed the new nisab. Imam Abu Hanifa said no. As long as he possessed the nisab 1 day, then we count from that day. Then if the wealth or the nisab fluctuates, or his wealth and possession or investment or trade of goods dips below the nisab, as long as it goes up again within the same year, then he counts on the very beginning. And obviously the opinion of Al-Jumhur is more right, which is the nisab has to be maintained throughout the entire Islamic year, the lunar calendar. So if it dips below the nisab at any say time, then once again he is enriched, or he possesses the nisab or more. You start counting from the moment that you possess the nisab, and it was not affected throughout the entire hawl or lunar year.
So that person in debt, for example, he's now maybe on the other side. He may be the one who can take zakah. Is that not true? If now he's the one who's...
Oh, you've taken us to another area, which is debt.
Yes.
Right? Or zakah on debt. This is a very important subject, and we should really have an entire episode for it. But anyway, we got to address the creditor and the debtor. Because the creditor, the one who will lend somebody money. Whenever now he's ready to pay the zakah on his possession and he's rich and everything, he's going to ask a question. Well, there is some money which I credited or I lent to somebody. Do I have to pay zakah on it? We will answer him as follows. We will say, well, it depends. If the debtor is somebody who is paying on time, who acknowledges the debt, and he does not deny it, and he pays on regular basis. So in this case, even though you did not collect your debt yet, first of all, we say, thank you so much for lending somebody money, because this is a great righteous act. But you have to pay the zakah on that money, on the loan, which you credited to somebody, because it's yours. Unless, if this person is bankrupt and he said, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't pay. I cannot pay. If you want to take me to court, do whatever you like, because I have no money, I'm broke. He filed for bankruptcy. Or if this person is wicked, and since he did not write any documentation, he said, well, what money you're talking about? I didn't take anything from you. So in these two conditions, we call it a dead debt. Because you're not expecting to collect it. It's over. Your reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this condition, it is not fair to ask you to pay zakah on wealth which you're not expecting to collect it, even though it's yours and it is your right. But the scholar said, but what if the person, the debtor, one day recognized the truth and he said, Alhamdulillah, Allah blessed me with money, thank you so much, and here is your money. So in this condition, you pay the zakah on it for 1 year only. But the years, if he kept the money for 10 years, 20 years, as long as he denied it, and he did not acknowledge it, or you did not expect to collect the money back, you don't have to pay on all of those years. You'd only pay the zakah once you collect the money for one past year.
Okay, now that's a very good answer, because it comes into another area, Sheikh. I'm sorry for giving you all these questions,
no problem.
But they're popping up. I'm sure that our viewers are thinking, so what about somebody, like you said, money, you said it returns to him. What about somebody who doesn't have money in the first place? They are the one that zakah is given to, and then all of a sudden they take money. For example, an orphan. An orphan may inherit money. Now, this inheritance of his money, is this zakatable?
Okay. Zakah on the wealth of an orphan is a subject by itself. Meaning, we agreed that any person possesses the nisab will start counting from the day where he have achieved the nisab. Okay? So an orphan today inherited several $1 million. So from that day we start counting 1 lunar year. But the question is, well, he's an orphan. He doesn't invest any money, and his money is sitting in the bank or in a saving account. Correct. But there is a zakah due on his wealth once it reached the nisab or exceeded it. Why? Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated that you should invest. He was addressing the guardians or those who look after the wealth of orphans. He said you should invest in their wealth lest the zakah may devour it over years. So even though he is an orphan, but al-jumhur, the vast majority of the scholars said, well, yes, there is zakah due on the wealth of the orphan if it reaches or exceeds the nisab as well.
Jazakallah Shaykh for all your advice today and explanation. We've come to another end of the episode on Fiqh of Zakah. Very important topic. We learned so much from it. I hope you've been taking notes. It's a topic, like we said before, it's the third pillar of Islam. It's mentioned over 30 times just in the Quran alone in certain areas, and over 20 times when it comes to Salah. A very important topic. Please join us next time on the Fiqh of Zakah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Have a little of yourself. Cure your greed, purify your wealth. Look around at where you live. Look at all the good you have to give. Give a little of yourself. There's a hand somewhere to hold, a mouth to feed. There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves. Know Allah sees each and every hidden deed.